All right, guys. Welcome back to Screencast-O-Matic and Adobe Illustrator. What we're working on here are variations round two. I've got three examples to show you, and we're going to start off with this one in mobile. Here is that variation on desktop, laptop. So this is kind of what we went over at the meeting, that we're getting rid of all the boxes where all these things are all tucked away in these weird boxes. We got the poster for each show, and then this stuff's kind of like justified at the top and justified at the bottom to give each one its own separate kind of thing, but there's no lines or outlines around everything, sort of floating all together. Dan mentioned that he liked this repeating pattern in the background, so I've got like a darker version. I think we all kind of agree we're liking the darker background with the brighter content in the front. This is sort of GT's suggestion here that when we go on mobile, because we're going to have a sticky header on here, we're going to like make it as small as possible. So this is getting us a lower profile. This is all in one line there. The hamburger is going to be a flyout with all of our menu content. Missing my circles here, but there's a little back and forward controls for the slideshow there on. Then these are gonna rotate through. I can go ahead and label each of them as I crop them down to size. I've got this at like a 1 by 1 2, so a 1 by 2, kind of nice format. We could blow this up to go from edge to edge, or we could leave it with a little breathing room all the way around. That's up to you. But then basically jumping over here on the laptop version, it's gonna kind of be like that. Here are like, the little indicators to show which slide you're on. Excuse that photo is kind of squished there. That wouldn't be doing that ideally when you're live on the web. But got this repeated pattern in the background with the larger the script of Goodfoot on there. Address and like the kind of 1 2 3. I can't remember if we had art in there or not, but like the very top level navigation, so you don't need to get into the hamburger if you don't want to. Otherwise, this hamburger again will have the fly out. We'll do like a 2/3 or so width on the fly out, and have like all of the menu content in there. Sidebar, I've got that same kind of pattern in the background. We could do this real quick. I'm gonna go and we're going to release the clipping mask on that. So then, like, kind of as you scroll down, you can see like Instagram's down here. This just repeats on and on. So that's variation one on that. Moving on to this one here in the middle. This is kind of like what I think Neil was getting at. Like, well, what if we had an image slider in the background behind the header, which is totally doable. The only thing you can kind of notice a difference between this and that is if we do it back here, we're going to have some kind of gradient over it to dull it down a notch. But the Goodfoot's going to stand out nice on top of that. We can leave that content in there. Here's the sort of like we've got our navigation and then which slide you're on, hamburger menu, everything's tucked away, and we're just like getting right to it. Top thing, music, and go down this list. And again, so then each of these, they're not all boxed in. We can even put a little more room in between, but at this point, we've got the header, we've got a little descriptive sort of background image thing going on, address, menu, 1 2 listings all on that first screen. So that's I guess what we're calling number 2 here, and then that is going to be this one. So when we're up on laptop over here, obviously it's just a lot more in your face, and it's kind of like that shot I was showing you guys of that cover of Amy's site that I'm working on, where it's like the entire thing is a splash page on the front, and you've got, your image on there, you've got this, you got your sort of upper level navigation, and then the hamburger. Obviously, this is going to be your back and forth on the slider controls, and then which slide you're on. Go right into the sidebar and into music. We could, pull this down a notch and have this like full screen image on the front, or maybe even just enough so we could see that music is kind of our top level thing. So just kind of bump this all down a little bit. Again, it's just playing with size and stuff once we get up and running. But I'm imagining we're gonna have like full size, really rich photos to work with. And if we have something like this in the background with this gradient over it, it doesn't need to be super hella sharp. But obviously we want to use good stuff. And then what do we got on variation 3 is kind of combining both. So this is that photo that Dan sent me of the stage downstairs. I think it's looking pretty dynamic with some of that, like the lights like coming off in the background. This stuff looks really fun down here. This could maybe be, I don't know if I can get in there or not. This could maybe be a little brighter. Can I grab that from here? No, not without undoing the mask. Yeah, so then like this is, you've got your address, everything's tucked away in the hamburger. You've got, this without the filter on the top. I just thought maybe, going back to these things that JP had with the pointing fingers kind of thing. This is a lot cleaner without the mask over it. But that, I think, that green kind of goes with that green color that's in the palette. The blue's unique, but that darker background and all that, I think looks pretty good. And then this is sort of what you would see if you just scroll down. So you'd have, 6 or 7 of these listed. You'd have your see the full schedule button right underneath, and then you'd move into the sidebar. And this one's kind of a little different. I've got this, repeated background going on in there. Again, Dan mentioned he liked that, but I've got it on like a darker setting, and then each of these are kind of its own little standalone thing. And then I'm going to go over here and do this real quick, but clipping mask, release, and then you can see this goes down into Instagram, and then continues down to the end of the sidebar. Control Z on that. And let's look at the laptop on that real quick, and then I'll show you something else. So this is sort of like the laptop version on that, which this is just really cool back here. I love that image. I think it's really dynamic. You've got, these green are kind of like pointing down, the blue's kind of pointing up. You've got this dynamic, everything's pointing out away from the center. It's got like 3D almost effect. This, I think, is looking really sharp, about that size. You still got music above the fold on here, so you can tell that there's more going on. We could even have these pointing down. I thought pointing in seemed kind of cool. And then this is basically just that screen as you continue down. So here's, here's your sidebar, and then here's your sidebar continued. And then with this one, we can go to clipping mask and release, and that's going to show the whole thing. So you're going to go down through, and then it says see full schedule down at the bottom. But you'd have like, however many of those you needed. I don't know how much content we're going to have in here. So I was getting at, like, obviously this isn't going to work, like not all of this is going to fit on the screen. So this is going to have to scroll also. But yeah, so there's the variation on that. Let's get away from having everything highlighted. But see, each of these boxes just has room to breathe, call to action buttons to buy your tickets, and these will go over to like an individual screen. We'll have the sidebar, put more details about the show, links out to the DJs or whatever bands if they have something for their site, any additional artwork. We can throw in individual photos, and I can make custom templates for those. So that's what's going on there. And then we do have, yeah, okay, so we went over that, went over this. So this is just the sidebar, which is going to be underneath the music section. But if you want to check this out, I'll send this in an email too. But basically, I just grabbed these screen caps and added them to the site, the .NET site, which is protected, so you got to log in to see it. But if you look at it on your phone, it's just going to show the mobile version. You can at least scroll up and down to see, what it would look like on the phone. And then same with tablet and laptop. You're going to see it's, I believe, this variation, number one, the first one I did. So this variation and over here, this variation right now are online at this site if you want to go check it out, just for the sake of looking at it on an actual device instead of watching me ramble on in this video. And speaking of rambling on, I am, so I'm going to call it good here. Right on, let me know what you think, and let's keep this ball rolling. Cool.